Maple Leaf versus Uncle Sam, a trade tango gone wrong. This is a story of two nations bound by geography and history, yet often at odds when it comes to trade. Buckle up, folks, because we're diving headfirst into the turbulent waters of the Canada-US trade relationship. It's a journey filled with twists, turns, and the occasional stormy weather. It's a tale as old as time, or at least as old as NAFTA. The North American Free Trade Agreement, signed in 1994, was supposed to be a game-changer, creating one of the world's largest free trade zones. Two neighbors, one a hockey-loving maple syrup-guzzling giant, the other a superpower with a penchant for oversized, well, everything. Their cultural differences are as vast as their landscapes. You'd think they'd get along swimmingly, right? Think again. Despite their friendly facade, trade disputes have often led to tense diplomatic standoffs. The trade relationship between these two North American behemoths is more complicated than a Justin Trudeau photo album. From softwood lumber to dairy products, the list of contentious issues is long. Why should you care? Because when these two economic heavyweights start throwing their weight around, the whole world feels the tremors. Global markets can be shaken and international trade flows disrupted. We're talking about billions, nay, trillions of dollars in trade. The stakes are incredibly high, affecting everything from stock prices to the availability of goods in your local stores. We're talking about jobs, livelihoods, and the price of your morning coffee. Spoiler alert, it might go up. The ripple effects of these trade disputes can be felt in the most unexpected places. So grab your Tim Hortons, or Starbucks if you must, and let's unpack this trade kerfuffle. From tariffs to trade wars, we'll explore how this complex relationship impacts us all. Manley's warning, David versus Goliath, eh? Remember John Manley, Canada's former Deputy Prime Minister? Well, he recently dropped some truth bombs about a potential Canada-US trade war. In his words, Canada has no way to win a trade war against the US. Ouch, it's like bringing a hockey stick to a gunfight. Why is Canada so vulnerable? Let's just say it's complicated, but mostly, it boils down to one thing: reliance. Numbers don't lie. Canada's reliance on Uncle Sam is significant and undeniable. The economic ties between these two neighboring countries are deeply intertwined. Here's the thing. Canada sends a whopping 70% of its exports to the US. This means that a large portion of Canada's economic health is directly tied to the American market. That's like Canada putting all its eggs in one basket, and that basket is shaped like Uncle Sam's hat. This heavy reliance can be risky, especially if the US economy faces downturns or trade policies change. In contrast, the US imports stuff from all over the world. The American market is diversified, sourcing goods from a multitude of countries, which spreads out its economic risks. Even if you combine imports from Canada, China, and Mexico, it's still only about half of all US imports. This shows how the US has a more balanced and varied import strategy. So, if a trade war breaks out, Canada's economy could be in deep doo-doo. The repercussions could be severe, affecting everything from jobs to the value of the Canadian dollar. It's like that time you bet your life savings on the Toronto Maple Leafs winning the Stanley Cup. Spoiler alert, you lost. The stakes are high and the risks are real. Section 4. Oh, Canada, where the tariffs might flow. Now let's talk tariffs, baby. If the US slaps a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, it would hit Canada harder than a Zdeno Chara slap shot. And one sector in particular would feel the pain energy. Canada sends a mind-boggling 80% of its oil exports to the US. That's like Canada's economic lifeblood flowing straight into Uncle Sam's gas tank. Imagine the chaos: higher gas prices, energy shortages, and Canadians shivering in the dark because they can't afford to turn on the heat. It's enough to make you want to move to Igloolik and call it a day. Section 5. Echoes of Trump, the ghost of tariffs past. This whole trade war thing might feel a bit familiar, like a bad rerun you can't escape. That's because we've been here before. Remember the Trump era? Yeah, good times, good times. During his reign, the Donald loved to threaten tariffs on Canada like they were going out of style. Aluminum, steel, autos, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, you name it, he wanted to slap a tariff on it. It was like he thought trade wars were easy to win. Spoiler alert, they're not. But hey, at least he's gone now, right? Right? Section 6. America's Pyrrhic victory, the cost of winning. Now you might be thinking, hold on, John, if Canada's so screwed, doesn't that mean the US automatically wins this trade war? It's a fair question, and on the surface, it might seem like a straightforward win for the United States. After all, if your competitor is struggling, it should be easier for you to come out on top, right? Well, not so fast, my friend. Remember what they say about cutting off your nose to spite your face? This old proverb perfectly encapsulates the situation. It's a reminder that actions intended to harm others can often end up causing more damage to oneself. Yeah, that's kind of what's happening here. The US might be inflicting damage on Canada, but it's also setting itself up for some serious repercussions. Sure, the US has leverage. With its massive economy and significant influence, it can impose tariffs and trade restrictions that put pressure on its neighbors. But those tariffs on Canadian and Mexican goods could come back to bite them in the you-know-what. These measures might seem like a good idea in the short term, but they can have unintended consequences. We're talking supply chain disruptions, which can lead to delays in getting products to market. This can affect everything from electronics to food items, causing shortages and frustration among consumers. Higher prices for businesses and consumers, job losses, the whole shebang. When companies have to pay more for imported goods, they often pass those costs on to consumers, leading to inflation. Remember those $3,000 price hikes on cars and 50-cent gas increases during the Trump years? These were direct results of trade policies and tariffs. Yeah, those could make a comeback. If the trade war escalates, we could see similar price hikes and economic strain. So while it might look like a win on paper, the reality is far more complex and potentially damaging for everyone involved. Section 7. Don't poke the moose Canada's retaliation arsenal. And don't think for a minute that Canada will just take this lying down. They might be nice, but they're not pushovers. Canada has its own arsenal of retaliatory tariffs just waiting to be unleashed. And who do you think those tariffs will hit? That's right, American businesses and consumers. Fuel exporters, automakers, manufacturers, especially those in states like New Mexico, Texas, Ohio, and Maine, brace yourselves. It's going to be a bumpy ride.